top of the morning to you, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. I just found out that I'm part Irish, so that's my greeting to you for this episode of the podcast. This is episode 13 of the Ground podcast from the Cathedral Project, and today's guest is a super cool girl I just met named Jena Ocean. Jena is a deconstructed Christian who is also a poet, podcaster, court jester, high priestess, director of merriment and fun, haunted pub crawl guide, water enthusiast, eclectic witch, and ex-evangelical. She holds a bachelor's degree in theology and is the author of 2 self-published poetry books. She lives in New England with her husband and the neighborhood squirrels. I did not write that bio. Jena did, and I'm so grateful that she did because you can hear loads of personality in there already. Before we jump into this interview, first, a few announcements. Please don't walk, run to check out The Religion Business. You can find them at religionbusiness.com or on Instagram at religionbusiness. This is not an official partnership, but we feel very aligned in our purposes, and you should check out the work being done by Nathan Apfel and Chris Ayub to bring the modern church into accountability for how its funds are being spent. Nearly $1 trillion goes to the nonprofit sector every year, and the lion's share of that is churches. As a matter of fact, one LDS church hedge fund was actually registered as a church itself, the hedge fund was. So these type of shocking realizations and such are coming out in this expose, which should be available come fall of this year. Keep an ear out for them and for their work. I think it's very important, and they're offering practical ways to offer transparency to donors through a software platform that they are creating. So we're looking forward to seeing that come out. Second, we are looking for your feedback. Please go to cathedralproject.com. Just click the bar at the top, and you'll see a blog post with some suggestions for ways to answer how we can show up better for you as an organization, as a podcast, what kind of content you'd like to see, all these sort of questions. We'd love to get some feedback from you on that. We'll also be looking for ways to set up polls for this sort of information on Facebook and Instagram, so be on the lookout for those. One last note for you, the audio quality on this interview did suffer just a little bit due to some technical difficulties, but it's definitely listenable and it's a very fun conversation. So, without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Jena Ocean. What's up?
Hello. Sorry I'm running a little late and I'm flushed. I just finished a CrossFit workout. It got out a little late.
Yeah. Well, you have to tell me about it. When you have a CrossFit workout, you're supposed to tell people. Where are you living? What area of the U.S. you in?
I live in New England.
Okay. So what's it like in New England? What are you guys doing up there for fun? What's it like? What's life like there?
Things we do for fun. Right now, everything's starting to bloom. So it's like me and my partner went to the lake. There's a lake near our house, and we just kind of putz around.
Yeah.
And enjoy life now that it's not freezing.
Yeah. Are you originally from New England, or what area are you from originally?
No, I grew up in Southern California.
Sweet. Okay.
But I've been out here for 8 years.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know this, but my wife is like my Instagram scout, and she finds people. She's like, you got to interview this person. You got to interview this. So actually, it's working really well. I'm just kind of letting her be my talent acquisition, I guess. And she was like, God, you got to talk with this girl. She seems really cool. So I'm pumped.
What a good team. I hope you're paying her well, like iced coffee or something.
Pay her in back rubs.
Yeah.
Words of affirmation.
Okay. Those are the love languages.
Yeah, it works.
That's awesome. No, thank you for inviting me. It's really fun. Have I ever been interviewed? I mostly interview people, with my podcast. Yeah. So this is like every podcaster's dream to get asked questions on the reverse side.
Yeah. Yeah. You are living the dream I actually have as well. I'm hoping to get invited someday. So this is good. This is like the beginning of the back and forth energy, man. We're opening up some new shit. I'm into it. All right. So she found you and loved your tattoos. That's another thing we got to talk about. All right. So the latest one, what is this on the shoulder? The lady is she from like I think I read from like a collage or something. Is that right? Or
so it's a Joan of Arc type.
Sweet, dude.
Hard to show her, but
yeah.
Like most of my tattoos, I went in thinking this would be like, for some reason, I think every tattoo I get is going to be like 3 inches big. It's just like whenever I go to a party, I think there'll be 12 people there. And if there's more than 12 people, I'm very overwhelmed and just like shocked that so many people. So anyway, I came in thinking I was going to get this tiny little Joan of Arc tattoo. And it's my whole shoulder. I do love it, but it's there. That's on my body.
Out with a piece. That's a piece, dude. Shoulder piece.
Took 4 hours. Yeah. But I really like it because you can't really tell, but she is very Joan of Arc with the armor.
Yeah.
But she also has clown makeup that's sort of dripping down her face. And she just looks tired. Yeah. And I know you mentioned the Enneagram, so I'll just whip that out real quick. Dude, I'm a 7 wing 8. And so a tired clown, I think that's what a 7 wing 8 should be called instead of like the enthusiast or whatever. A tired clown. Yeah,
tired clown. That's actually my wife is a 7 wing 8.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. We joke about that 7s. She's all of her friends, all of her best friends, myself, all 4s. Like she's just attracted to 4s. You know what I mean? I don't know what the deal is with that. Same.
My a 4. My best. Yeah. And all my best friends are 4s.
Now I know she'd love you now. That's like too perfect. I'm going to tell her, she's going to flip out when she hears that. Like, no way, the 7s and the 4s. Do 1s get into your life? That's the question. By the way, I will clear this up, listeners, later about the numbers and stuff. But do 1s ever get into your life?
I try to keep them out. I'm just kidding. Not really, to be honest. I think that my lifestyle and my habits would truly drive one's ape. Wait, how's explicative?
Dude, go for it. Just go for it.
Great. So yeah, I just think I'd drive a 1 crazy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I'm so anti like structure to my detriment.
Yeah, I get that.
My credit score could be improved a lot.
Mine's this is
how's your credit score?
Yeah, let's talk about it. By the way, this episode is sponsored by Credit Karma, Rocket Mortgage.
Check your credit for free.
Yeah. No, it's actually pretty good right now, which is weird because it's never been good. But it's pretty good. So I don't know. Whatever. Give me money out there, people. If you hear that, this podcast host has a great credit score.
There you go.
It really comes through in the voice, you know. So tell me about Joy Play. What is this thing? What's going on with this? I love this venture of yours. I just want to hear more about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're really good at asking questions and transitioning. I'm trying to take notes right now for that. Sorry for that meta commentary, but
no, I love it.
So Joy Play is my creative venture that I sometimes also make money off of. And originally it was going to be sort of a strictly yoga business.
Yeah.
Where I invited people to local yoga events and then global retreats, which launched 2 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, somewhere kind of recently in the last 6 months or so, I've been noticing that it's taking a different form that's not just strictly yoga. I tend to make my hobbies into work. I actually like that. And so as I naturally change, my business has changed. So I'm still wanting to do retreats And I want them to be for people, I don't know, who have gone through similar things with me, of like deconstructing religion, looking for different ways and modes of spirituality, and really for community. I feel like a lot of folks are pretty lonely. Like that's a thing that we all, that's part of humanity, I guess. But a lot of times church fills that void of like loneliness, but to the detriment sometimes of other unique aspects of individuality. And so I'm thinking there's got to be a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah. That's very much part of the mission of what I'm up to right now. And I don't know if you heard the Tim Burnett episode from about a week ago, but he's got something called the Way Collective in California. And what they're doing is they're not focusing on belief, they're focusing on practice. So you can't be ousted from the community because your beliefs are different. You are just there sharing an embodiment and contemplation and a wide range of beliefs. I think that's a much healthier type of gathering. And I think you're going to see a lot more of these pop up. So I love what Joy Play's doing. That feels like we're in lockstep with this attacking loneliness, like just coming straight at it. Cause it's a real issue, man. I mean, we felt it out here in the country and had to kind of create our own gathering, which became a ground gathering, which is what the gatherings are about from the Cathedral Project. So tight, dude. That's some cool stuff. I'm glad you're into that. So the yoga stuff, is this like
one question about Tim Burnett?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, as you were talking, I was just thinking about the Bible passage where Jesus, it just something clicked for me, and I don't know if he's basing it off of that, but when Jesus said, like, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, he started with way, which is an action verb.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Well, the earliest Christians, would have called themselves the way.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah. So the whole idea is like, this is not about another thing Tim said, and we're just going to talk about Tim for the rest of the episode.
Yeah,
with you.
Absolutely.
Another thing Tim said was that the movement is from word to flesh and not the other way around. So if you're trying to get your beliefs and your rationalizations all right, you're moving the wrong direction. So speaking of that and deconstruction, I see on your profile that you're a witch. Can you tell us what this is like? What's it like being a witch? What's that all about? I want to hear how serious we are about this. I just want to know. I'm so fascinated by this concept.
Absolutely. I'm going to totally answer that question. I just want to put a pin in the idea of back to what's his name?
Tim Burnett.
Back to Tim real quick, just as a 4, like you being a 4, the idea of going from, that's such a big deal, not to go from belief to action, because 4s get so stuck in getting it right before acting. Anyway, being a witch.
Yeah, getting it right before acting. So let's get it right. And those witch stuff, Wicca. I don't know what, probably not Wicca, but being a witch. Tell me. Let's hear it.
I don't think I'm Wiccan. I also, you'll notice throughout our conversation, William, that, so I did study theology, but I have the memory of like a really smart goldfish where like I've forgotten everything in the front of my brain, but it exists back there. So when people bring it up, it's like I'm discovering it for the first time.
Yeah.
But I may have written a 10-page paper about it, which is just kind of a funny. Yeah. People are like, oh yeah, and like eschatology. I'm like, I know that word, and it's very exciting for me.
It's like calculus.
I don't know about calculus, but
I'm just saying that because I don't remember shit about it. It was like another language. So tell us what you mean when you say you're a witch. And I'm not saying this because I want to clarify it. Look, I'm in a place in my life, and I know a lot of people listening to this are, where we're much less into judging the paths that anyone are on. We just want to hear what you mean and where you're at with that. That's really it. Yeah.
So I bought a book when I was graduating in 2020. Great year to graduate. And it was called Becoming Dangerous. And it's this bright red book with a black hand on it, sort of looking like it's conjuring something. And the whole book, the premise of it was that the difference between a lay person and a witch is that the witch knows she is powerful and the lay person can only guess, only wonders. And that was the most heretical thing that I could read at the time, graduating from my little Christian college. But I found it intriguing. And then I read this book full of stories of people discovering their own personal magic in this world, or even the magic of nature. And I guess it was just a series of reading books and stopping going to church that I kind of was like, well, what would it be like to call myself a witch? And I was like, no, that's not right. It sounds evil. And just all of these presuppositions coming up in labels, right? And eventually I heard someone say, well, the reason that we call ourselves witches is because we can now. And because people who weren't even witches, that were Christians, that were just trying to figure out medicine or the alternative forms of healing that weren't offered to them by the state or XYZ, those people were the ones like burned at the stake, or in the case 30 miles from where I live, hung at the gallows in Salem. So there's a reclaiming power to the word witch. It's forces people to acknowledge a kind of bloody history as well, which I kind of like. My 8-wing is like, yay, a little bit of conflict. Let's look at the underbelly of society and the way things are.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm still not like totally comfortable with the word. I'll call myself that, but I'm also like, I think it's a really powerful term, and I'm with it right now.
Yeah.
And if I don't like it in the future, then I will stop calling myself it.
Yeah. I just like it because it kind of snaps you out of the old dusty sort of belief walking pattern that you're in. You know, when you hear that word, it sort of makes you like re-examine your own. You're like, whoa, why'd I react to that word? What is it in me that reacted to that word? And then you have to realize like this place of belief, like really bringing it down a few notches in importance, I think is going to be super important. I mean, let's choose instead to only believe in positive futures. Let's believe in like, you know, optimistic outlooks on life or in each other or in, you know, whatever it is, things that we really need to collectively integrate into our consciousness now. So I love it because in my mind, it makes me think of uniting and not immediately dismissing someone, because obviously you've got some real beauty in your life right now, you know, just from paying attention to your social media and stuff. I mean, it looks like it's creating some pretty cool stuff for you. And I think that's great. I think that's a good journey. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm glad that, what was it that you brought up? You brought up that reaction, and that when we encounter something and there's a big reaction, that's been if I could summarize my deconstruction journey in a little tidbit, it would be becoming aware of my body and my physical reactions to things. And it's been so powerful to me every time that I come against fear, really. Anytime there's fear, stopping and saying, oh, that's interesting because I'm actually safe, right? Like if I'm on my phone scrolling through and I see someone calling themselves a witch and all of a sudden I'm in fight or flight, it's like, there needs to be a pause there because no one is coming to harm me for them doing that thing. And then it becomes this journey of exploration. And I've become my imagination and my physical body have become so intertwined where I can close my eyes and say, okay, I feel nervousness around the sides of my neck and it trickles down to my hand and it feels like spiky. And even just that little pivot of honoring the body and the reactions is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, Speaking of deconstruction, I'm so glad you went there. That was where I was going to take us, was your faith history and the deconstruction piece. I mean, like, these beliefs, like I'm talking about knocking them down a few notches, one of the big doctrines that we have jammed down our throats in the more fundamental evangelical Christian world is this like near hatred for our own bodies. And we've been kind of led to believe that it's the source of our sinful desires. And I really want to make a clear distinction too. I'm writing right now about this, a clear distinction between the flesh and the ego, because I think those are actually like the same thing. The flesh is not the body. I don't believe that. I think that we were kind of given this term by Paul because his understanding seems to have been tied to the body. But I think our consciousness has evolved to a point now where we can say, no, this like resistance that we feel, or this, internal Satan, or whatever it is you want to call it, this egregore of negative intention and thought that we kind of form and bring into our own lives, that is from the ego. That's from egocentric desire and from egocentric action. It's not from our bodies. So I'm really glad that that's the direction that I love hearing that that's the way your deconstruction came onto you. Do you think that like being a female, like it's a superpower of yours, connecting with your body that way? I feel like it is for my wife and for so many women I know.
Absolutely. I do. I love, you'll see a lot of witches that practice what they will call Menses magic or blood magic. And all that really means, I mean, they can mean a variety of things, but the core of it is that you recognize that you are a body that goes through a cycle of life, death, and life along with the moon, and that presents itself through blood and through a period. But it's not just the blood. It's actually fascinating, and not to go off too much on a tangent, but you experience every single season of the year in a month as a woman. You have the spring and ovulation and energy, and there's actual hormones and things happening in the brain. And then you go way down after that and you lose all this estrogen. And so I do think I'm very grateful to be personally, like, I love being in a female body. I know not everyone does, and that can be a real struggle. But for me, I think it is this, I can't be separate from being a creature. I'm very creaturely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
I have something to say about ego, but I'd love to hear what you were saying first.
I was just going to say, my wife and I were talking about the way it seems to manifest in like a cisgendered comfortable male and a cisgendered comfortable female, like in terms of what's been called the divine feminine or divine masculine. It seems like the males are more comfortable with this sort of formlessness and emptiness and wandering sort of imagery. And then the female, the embodied female, seems to be more comfortable with embodiment and with an entity and with attaching all of that to something more personal and relatable. Have you found that to be true for yourself too? Or I'm curious. I don't know if I'm not preaching gospel here. I'm just saying we seem to be seeing that trend.
Yeah, So the reason I'm pausing is because I just watched, I'm going to take a left turn here. I just watched the Escaping Twin Flames universe on Netflix. Are you familiar?
Not at all, but make me familiar.
It's this very mini docuseries about a cult in America that was started by this so it's like if conservative Christianity and New Age spiritualism had a baby, had a drunk baby. Wow. That's what one of their reviews said. So they're one of the things they're under fire. Their whole thing is that you have a twin flame in this universe, like a soulmate. Even every word that I'm using is making me cringe deeply inside. And that you can identify this twin flame with their help. And then it's up to you to secure that person as your eternal person. So they're under fire for pushing people to stalk people, for undergoing like pushed gender I'm losing the word. But anyway, their whole thing is like divine feminine and divine masculine, and they enforce that among their members.
Oh, yeah.
To the point of when there's lesbian couples being like, well, which one of you is the guy and should you transition type of thing?
Whoa.
Yeah. So like, I love divine feminine and divine masculine as long as it's energies and not assigned to actual sexes. Like, of course, they can be intertwined, but that's why I'm extra hesitating there, because I literally just watched this documentary and I'm like, yikes, that's an example of this taken to the extreme type of idea.
Yeah.
So
that's good. I think we're all a little on edge these days with this topic, because it's not like we're saying that the biological processes, the kind of creatures that we are, and sexual reproduction and all of that are just, there's some sort of immutable and completely mutually exclusive roles, male over here, female over here. There's definitely a spectrum. But there also is some kind of an archetype that we can identify. So I think that for those of us who are like extra comfortable in that world, we're the ones that are really having to try to grow into this new era. And I'm down with it. Like I've got some people coming into my life who are going to be stretching me in this way, and I welcome it, and I'm happy about it. I see it as another deconstruction of sorts, and I'm all about welcoming that in. So, yeah, but wow, the twin flame thing, I had heard about that from, who else was it I heard? Some other podcast, but that's wild. That's very culty,
Oh yeah, they're making like millions of dollars off of it. But yeah, I would love to go back to something you said on ego, if that's okay.
Great, let's do it. Yeah.
So I'm curious how you define ego.
Okay. So all of this is held in an open hand. I would say that the ego is something in us. I would call it a mental projection of self based on the roles that are played in life, as opposed to like, this is going to go ahead and what's the word I'm looking for? This is going to go ahead and imply another belief here, but like, as opposed to the higher self, or, our direct connection to like the ocean of consciousness, to the divine. The ego would be that sort of set of mental processes that assemble themselves into an identity based on those roles. That's how I would define it. What do you think?
Yeah, you said something that gave me the imagery of a mask, sort of a thing to put on. I think you said assemble, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason that I asked, I have a similar definition. I think for me, it's the ego is sort of the mask that you put on to really keep your child self safe. And sometimes that's helpful and sometimes that's not helpful. And that's where the higher self has to come in and be able to say, actually, oh, in this situation, I'm actually safe here. So let's put down the mask for a second, because you're with your partner who you've been with for 6 years and you know that they're not going anywhere. You don't need to be that entertainer, snappy, whatever I'm doing going on. But I've had an interesting journey with ego, because at first I made that, I really like that. I think that distinction is so important for Christians that you made about when Paul's talking about the flesh. He's not meaning your physical body that eats and breathes and chews and masticates. I think that's chewing. Anyway, but
it's a great word for it.
Mastication, evaporation, condensation on my mind.
Hey,
thank you. That's the water cycle taught to me in the 5th grade. Anyway, but that it's that what he's referring to is something that is combating your higher self, and that's his ego. And then I would say in my processing, and this is what I've been trying to say, I feel like I've gone, I don't want to say a step further, but in that sense, along that line, a step further, where I try to embrace every part of myself, even if it seems like bad. And the embracing the ego has been part of that, and treating the ego as a sibling or something close to me.
Yeah. I heard it described as a roommate. Like it's not going anywhere. You're going to have to learn how to get along with it. And I think you can eventually like put it in service of the higher self. I don't think you're going to annihilate it.
Yeah. And I really don't want to, especially as someone who's really extra and really into theater and being on a stage and having attention. I need that. I do need that mask, because if I'm going up and bearing my purest self to everyone all the time, that's not going to end well.
Yeah. It's exhausting too. Yeah. Socially, just the world isn't ready for that. It's not ready for an Enneagram 7 wing 8 witch to just come at them just full bore, full send.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, I want to talk about something that is pretty sensitive, and I want to be really gentle with this subject because it's near and dear to our hearts. My wife just lost her mom about 2 years ago. We've talked about it a few times on the podcast, and I hear that you lost yours as well. I don't know how long ago that was. How long ago was that?
So my mom died in October of 2017.
Okay.
I'm sorry to hear about your wife's mom.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Yeah, it was tough. She was an amazing woman, and she helped us out. She just helped us out so much in so many ways. So it was a big deal to lose her. But we get a sense of her all the time. We see her in hummingbirds and flowers and whispers.
Mm-hmm. Hummingbirds for you guys?
Yeah. Hummingbirds are a big one. They show up, and they showed up right at in the house where she passed away. Natalie was out in the kitchen crying, and a hummingbird just flew into the window. It was the first one she'd seen that year. And now every time we see a hummingbird, we think about Nancy. What was your mom like, Jena?
My mom, Michelle, was a riot. She was a riot.
Awesome.
And oh my gosh, she was the funniest, most exhausting human being. And she was a swimmer. And when she got pregnant with me, she was going to be transferring to like a D1 swim school in college. And she was really fast. And she's just always been this like killer athlete. And that was something that I think saved her for a long time, because she could get out. She could sort of release trauma in some ways through her physical body.
Yeah.
She was a beast. She got me into CrossFit, why I'm flushed. I just got back from CrossFit.
Nice.
Yeah. And she struggled with her mental health, and I didn't know that. And we didn't know that as a family. There wasn't, I don't know why, like in retrospect, it's like, how could you not know that she was struggling? But I mean, really the mental health conversation has, thankfully, but it's recent. Like, it's not in her generation. You were kind of seen as like weak for going to therapy. And
yeah,
so she just wouldn't accept help, really. And she ended up she attempted suicide my senior year in high school.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that was
God.
Yeah. My senior year, every time I've gone to graduate something, there's been some snafus in the punch, but it's interesting to reflect on, because then in college, the pandemic happened, and there's really only so many graduations you have. I don't remember my preschool graduation, but
neither do I.
I actually do remember parts of that, but that's a whole nother thing. We made these like we painted our little hats, and it was very cute. I had two boyfriends. Thank you for asking. One was for kitchen time, and one was for the sandbox time. And their names were Justin and Dashel. Dashel. That was his real name.
Very progressive of you, you know?
Yeah, I knew polyamory was on its way around, and I thought might as well break the grounds for this now.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a great transition. Yeah, my mom ended up actually committing suicide. So she attempted senior year, she committed suicide my sophomore year of college. And that was October of 2017. And to make this kind of full circle to the hummingbird, my mom, so I used to work in a butterfly house when I was 13, because what else, what, that's what 13-year-olds do. They volunteer their time with all the 60-year-olds in the butterfly house. And I just remember that I told my mom, if you were a butterfly, I think you'd be the Western tiger swallowtail. And it's this bright yellow, big, bold butterfly with black lining on it. If you've been, they're everywhere. And so the other day, on Mother's Day, I was walking with someone who had also lost his mom. And I saw a Western tiger swallowtail right when we were talking about it. And he has Down syndrome. And so I was just trying to explain to him about the butterfly. And it was a sweet little moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm so sorry to hear about that, Jenna. That's tough stuff, man, to work through that. You need to make some space for your mom, man. So was Mother's Day okay for you? I mean, I know it was just recent.
So, yeah, I think it was on Sunday, a few days ago.
Yeah.
Mother's Day was fine. With anniversaries at the beginning, it's like, holy shit, everything's an anniversary. Like, geez, I have the death anniversary, then I have Mother's Day, and then it's her birthday. And it just feels so inescapable as far as even dates, which I think is just a reflection of how it feels at the beginning of losing someone in general. It's this inescapable grief, this big cloak that's been put on you. And then as the years go by, you still think of her. I still think of her, but the pain is less sharp. And in the most recent years, sometimes it's not super painful at all. Sometimes it sort of has transformed into this super bittersweet fruit that I get to take a bite of. And so I get to, it's half inescapable and half choosing into remembrance of that person that I love. And for a long time, I hated the fall because that's when she died. And it just was like, geez, everything is literally dying in New England. All the leaves are falling off the tree. And it's just a reminder that my mom died around the same time. And now fall is my favorite holiday. And that has been a progression of my deconstruction as well, or a result of that is it means a lot to me to follow the cycles of death and life. And I think that it's just kind of sweet that my mom died when everything else dies. And so I get to, it's like the world is grieving with me, or the earth is grieving.
That's really beautiful. You got kind of a device to deal with that grief as it comes up. That's really deep. I love that. Wow. So you told me if it's not too soon and not too much to deal with right now, you told me that you led worship at her memorial service. Is that right? What was that like?
So glad you asked. Because I do. This will wrap together, I promise. I do get a lot of hate on Instagram ever since it kind of blew up very recently. For a long time, I was just posting reels and it was like, the people in my book club giving me thumbs up. I'm like, thanks guys, you're my biggest fans. And which is great, but recently there's just been this huge influx of attention and not all of it positive. But one thing that people say a lot is like, you were never part of the church. You never knew Jesus if you reject him now, putting air quotes around that for those listening. And It's really, really, I know that they're ignorant, but it does actually hurt a lot because I was the most devout person that I knew. And I know that sounds like a weird flex, but I was all in. And for years, if people would ask me out on dates, I would say I'm dating Jesus. I considered being a nun for a while. I spent 2 hours in the prayer room every day praying and sometimes fasting, and for my whole time in college. And because I just had this belief in hope and that resurrection theme that you find in Christianity, which is a beautiful archetype.
Yeah.
And so when my mom died, it wasn't like putting on an act at all. I was like, there were two things happening. One was that I thought this is a beautiful time to, I guess, share with people that there is hope, even though my mom felt hopeless. And also, this is the only tool I have to cling on to right now because everything's in shambles. And when you lose a mother, especially, I think a mom holds ground for you, even if she is imperfect, even if you don't get along with her. There's a sense of this is where you've come from. And when that gets ripped out, it really does feel like the ground falls through and you're now looking for, where do my roots go? And you're kind of in this free fall.
Yeah.
So at the time, I that was one of my strongholds, was that I had this faith in Christ and that I'd see her again in that way. And there was a solidity to that. So I sang, let's see, You Are Good by Bethel, I think, or Hillsong. I don't know, they're the same thing. Just one's Australian.
Yeah.
And then we sang a hymn, and some people converted to Christianity from that service. I don't know whether to say sorry or, but there were people that after that were like, have had some genuine faith type of thing from that.
Yeah.
But I orchestrated that whole shindig and put together a slideshow, and I wanted to honor my mom, and I wanted to be protective of her, and I wanted to control the environment that she was being honored in.
Yeah. How did you feel, just sidebar, how did you feel about worship music at that point in your journey? Were you still gung-ho?
So, interestingly, I was undergoing a big spiritual moment the night before my mom took her life.
Oh, wow.
The night before my mom, so I've been seeing, it's kind of hard to explain, but I've been seeing these patterns of like red and blue all over. And because I've spent hours in prayer and all that type of thing, it formulated in my mind that the red and blue was standing for the humanity of Jesus, because blood and water poured out from his side. And that theologically, a lot of people have interpreted to mean he gave spirit and life. Water, I believe. I don't know which one represents which. Probably water, spirit, blood, life. But and the humanity of Jesus as like a carpenter, specifically with like the dirt under his nails, was in my mind every day for a while. And that may sound obvious or whatever, but for me, that was a big step, because I naturally am very ethereal. I'm very in the air. I'm very ideas oriented, Holy Spirit, like when I was in Christianity.
Yeah.
And I vibed with that. I could freaking go off in like words of knowledge and worship and all that type of thing. And so to actually sit with Jesus as a human being that would have had scrapes on his hands and maybe some wrinkles at 32. I don't know. Sun's hot in Israel, in the coastal chaparral environment.
Hey, theology coming out there, that theology degree.
That's nice. Actually ecology, because coast of California is the most similar environment to Israel. And so I grew up in California being obsessed with like Israel for some reason. And I was like, we're in the same climate.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so it's more of just like nerdiness than theological. But oh my gosh, I got so lost in the coastal
It's
shower.
okay. You were talking about your spiritual kind of big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, I just was seeing red and blue everywhere. And then my best friend bought a red car and I bought a blue car. Anyways, this whole thing. And I was laying out in the grass of our field at the Christian college with one of my best friends. And I had this, one of those ineffable spiritual moments. And in retrospect, this would have been hours before my mom did take her life. And I was laying in the field, overcome with the fact that I'm a human being, having a human experience.
Yeah.
And so to wrap back to worship music, around that time was when I broke my only worship music listening, because for about 2 or 3 years, I strictly listened to music that was about distinctly worship. Yeah. And so I felt so edgy, like I was branching into these like soft singer-songwriters like Leif Volbeck and I don't know, a little bit of Hosier if I let myself, if I was really going crazy.
Right. Or Sufjan Stevens, heaven forbid you listen to that dude. Oh
God, then you're gonna be bisexual after listening to him. So that's probably what happened. But I was still with it with the worship music, but I was starting to go on this journey of, actually being a human is okay, and I don't need to try and escape this flesh.
Yeah.
It's all part of it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I asked you that question just because I cannot remember a time when I ever like really liked worship music.
Dude.
I mean, I was a worship leader. It's what I did. And
hey, you were too?
Yeah.
I can see that. Like, don't take that the wrong way.
No, it's okay.
I can just imagine you saying like, hello, church, like, hey, church,
Yeah, I had some. It's funny. I've realized that the podcast is almost like structured like a church service. Wait,
let's talk about this, William, because the itinerary you gave me is very detailed and it's very impressive.
Oh Lord. So okay.
What's going on? Like what's your zodiac? Tell me things.
Dude, I don't know. Okay, so I'm so glad you said that, because I wanted to get into some of this other stuff, like kind of what's going on with you parallel now, like post Christianity. The zodiac, man, I don't know. Like
Can I guess? No, don't. I'm not gonna guess. You go.
Well, I was gonna welcome you to do it. But as a matter of fact, you probably know more about this than I do. So why don't you go ahead and guess, and then I'll tell you what I might be. I don't know.
Okay. So I think you're either a Libra or a Pisces, but if I had to guess, it'd be Libra.
Okay. So do you follow Teal Swan on Instagram? Do you know who this lady is?
Teal Swan is involved in this Twin Flames thing. She's suing them. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Wait, you should fact check that, but I've never heard the name Teal Swan until I watched the documentary.
Oh man. So I don't know why I got turned on to her, but I just, something popped up one day. Oh, it was she was talking about, like, with the quantum age that we're in right now, all of these things, like, first of all, there are more theists and more believers in God in the scientific community than there have been in the last like 70 years or something like that. Just because everything that's coming out is kind of like, whoa, this is not only super duper complex, but it's also super duper sophisticated, wow. But so Teal Swan, she was talking about the universe inside another person, and how the kind of reverence that we need to have, being like these creatures who are just this amalgamation of probability into right now. that every person that you meet is a universe. And there's a subatomic realm inside everyone, and there are mysteries there. And we've only been tricked into thinking that we are these super simple, powerless creatures. Anyway, it really resonated with me. But anyway, I had a dream the other night, and she just busted into the dream out of nowhere. It was bizarre. And she was like, "You need to look into Pisces." And she was gone, and the dream ended, and I was awake. I was like, "What?" So I'm not an astrology guy, but I looked up the Pisces sign and was like, "Damn, dude, this is pretty accurate." Like a lot of romanticism and yeah, there's a lot of that. The artistic struggle for originality and for purpose and identity and all that is really strong here. I've heard, like, according to Western astrology, I might be, is it a Virgo? I don't remember which one. September is my birthday, if anybody wants to.
You're a Virgo.
Yeah.
Cool.
So according to that, but there's this mutability trait that I really hate. So anyway, I just kind of shy away from that. And I'm like, Pisces, maybe, I don't know. We'll find out.
You hate mutability? Pisces is also a mutable sign.
Is it? See, I have no idea. Educate me. What does mutability mean? What is this?
Well, first I want to ask you, did Teal Swan come into your dream as herself or as a teal swan? Because this is really important for me.
She came into my dream as herself with her long brown hair. Okay. But yeah, I think that's her I don't know, some kind of celestial creature, is a teal swan that flies into dreams. Maybe, who knows?
I like that. Yeah. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. I was just curious. Okay, so you're a Virgo. So this is getting more and more interesting because my partner is a Virgo as well. Okay. And a 4.
Wow.
Yeah, so I already know you. So what do you want to know?
Well, it was mutability. I the mutability thing, I think it pricked like a maybe a core wound or some sort of insecurity that I had thought I was past. And then I read about this and read about mutability, and I'm like, does this literally mean like people won't want to listen, or that I should be quiet and stand in the corner? I have no idea what mutability means.
Oh, interesting. First of all, yeah, nothing pisses me off more than when I look up something that's like written in the stars and they describe something that I really would not like to be.
Yeah.
And I am. So I can definitely relate to that. Mutability is, so I'm a mutable sign as well. And I'm just going to explain the 3 modes real quick because I think it will be helpful. And I think that it may dispel maybe a little bit of your dislike for mutability.
Sure.
So most people know that the zodiac signs, of which there are 12, can be divided into elements. A lot of people know I'm a fire sign, or I'm a water sign, earth, air. But there's also modalities. And the way that works is there's signs that start seasons, like literal seasons of the year. And there's signs that carry us through a season. And then there are signs that end seasons. The starters are called cardinal signs. The doers in the middle are fixed signs. They're often called stubborn. All those signs are called stubborn. And it's because they are one foot in front of the other, literally getting us through the middle. They're like, there's a sort of worker energy there. Yeah. And then mutable signs are at the end. And mutable signs are meant to usher us. They're meant to close doors. And there's a bit of death in every mutable sign. And the cycles, like I was talking about, because they're meant to usher us into something new. But in order to do that, there needs to be letting go. So mutable signs, so Sagittarius, we end fall because we go to December 21st. And then Pisces end winter. And Geminis end spring. And then Virgos end summer. So I just think it's helpful to have it within the structure of everything else. And like a lot of people, I can see where maybe you got this idea of like, should I not say anything in a room? Because we think of like the Leos, the fixed signs as being these showcasing elements, which they can be. Tends to be a way that what they say is consistent. They have like that throat chakra. They're going to say the same thing, be kind of the same in any room that they're put into. But the power of a mutable sign like us is that when we're put into a room, we're not going to act the same way as always. We are reading the energy much more subtly, I guess, and responding in the moment to that.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate for me. Yeah. Interesting. Wow.
But you're always going to struggle because you're a Virgo and because there's a sense of purity. That's really the virgin. And there's a sense that Virgos do tend to be purists in some aspect of life. And there's just that desire to experience something. I don't want to say the right way, but I guess that just that word purely, to experience life without bullshit shit, like any of it in the way, just a clear path.
Yeah. Essential. That's a word I've been using a lot. Like I'm most attracted to art that seems to boil down to an essence, because I don't know. I covet that kind of originality. And so when I'm working through my art, I feel constant check of like, man, is this really honest? Is this original? Am I borrowing? Is this good enough? You know what I mean? It's a thing.
I do, because I'm laughing because my partner is a musician and I just hear this all the time. Yeah.
Damn it.
Dang it.
Yeah, no, that makes complete and total sense to me, actually. And I appreciate you clearing up mutability for me, because I think it was just insecurity inside myself that was bucking against that sort of suggestion from the universe. I like that a lot. Well, I guess this could lead us into some other stuff. Like you've talked about, ancestors and being tied to ancestors. I thought about that immediately when I saw your Joan of Arc tattoo. Thought about, like, it's funny, there are all these people who want to claim they were Joan of Arc in another life, like I was Joan of Arc, or I was Napoleon, or whatever. But Joan of Arc seems to be like this really, very well revered figure for good reason, I'm sure. But when you talk about the always tired clown, you're talking about that in the post recently, like just tired all the time. Tell me about how the women that you've been, I think was the way that you worded it, the women I've been are tired. How does this play into like ancestral stuff with you right now? I'd love to hear what sort of things you're working through with this.
Yeah, I think you're referring to, around the time I found this, flash tattoo, I also on Pinterest saw this beautiful collage with different women from history, including Joan of Arc, but also just little vignettes of women either doing daily tasks or being kind of sitting double down in a kitchen looking tired or angry or whatever. And the collage just had 3 sentences that ended is all of the women in me are tired.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so powerful, because I think as someone, I'm trying to think of where to enter with this one. Maybe Enneagram is a good start. As someone who has a lot of energy, a lot of life energy, and a lot of vision for how things could be, there are times where I'm like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to freaking get past this ancient aeon that we're in and move into the new shit? And I think anyone who does any type of work that is longing to bring multiple people, like let's say even just more than yourself, towards something greater, whether that's purely non-religious justice, or whether that's something spiritual or whatever, I think that you hit this point of like realizing the work ahead of you, and it can be really defeating and really exhausting. But on the same tune, I like to think about the fact that each of us doesn't start from scratch. We don't reinvent a wheel the moment that we're born. And I think that it's funny when people think that, but really we're working off of what our ancestors have started. And so you pick up what they worked on, and you keep working, and then you will die. And hopefully you live a life where the work that you do is worthy of your descendants to pick up and then add on to. I told you a little bit about my mother. What I didn't tell you was that she was an ER nurse for 10 years, and she would always stay late. She was so invested in her patients. She like won an award for it, and also lost a lot of sleep over this stuff. But she was really passionate about that. My family on my dad's side descends, at least part of it, from Latvia very recently. My grandpa and his mother fled in the 1940s, emigrated, etc. From Latvia, they fled, and I've just started looking into these archives of them. And like my great grandma Helen, I knew her. No one's going to say she was a saint. She was insanely racist. The other day, I was on a little vacation with one of my best friends, and because I have ADHD, sometimes my thoughts don't make what I'm putting together doesn't make sense. And apparently, this came out of my mouth. I was like, when you were talking about ancestors and ancestor veneration, no one person is a completely bad thing. And then I'm just thinking, going off. I'm like, for example, like my great grandma Helen, insanely racist. And then there was a big pause, and my thoughts kept going, and I was making connections. But the only thing that came out of my mouth was, but she was a shopkeeper. And we were just laughing because it's like, you can be racist if you own a shop.
What a redeeming profession to get into for that ism that you're really struggling with, that really needs to get left behind. Yeah, that's good.
Right. And my thinking there was like, she knew how to survive fucking Soviet Russia. And thank God that she did, because I exist. Doesn't excuse anything, but there is something to being able to recognize the efforts that your ancestors made to survive.
Yeah.
And that no one person is a completely bad thing. And so when I got that tattoo, it was in recognition that there are ancestrally all these genes, all the women in me, all the women that came before me that fought to be alive in one way or another. And beyond that, maybe they fought to gain expression of a certain thing, or to make something societally a little better. And so I think that there's a beauty in tired women as well, and thinking of that.
Yeah, that's great, man. I wrote some stuff down about this. Obviously, I wrote down a lot of things. By the way, talking about this outline, I write all this just so that hopefully it sticks in my brain enough to just organically speak on it as we're talking. And it's but yeah, I wrote out a lot. So
I like that. No, I'm gonna steal it for my own podcasting. So
that's right.
Yeah.
So has there been any like digging deeper into the ancestor stuff? Have there been any efforts? I mean, my wife consulted with a medium after she lost her mom, and it was some pretty crazy stuff that came from that experience. And it was just the most like harmless, beautiful, like your mom's resting in a bed of flowers in your garden sort of thing. Your mom's going to be around for, I get the sense, the next 7 years, which was exactly how long it was going to be until our youngest graduated high school. Like she's going to be hanging with your family. She loved us so much. She's going to be hanging with your family for about the next 7 years. And then she's going to be roaming a little more after that or whatever it was. But that was amazing. So when it comes to this topic, just like when you say the word witch, or just like when you now say deconstruction or new age, these words carry with them this sort of residue from old belief. So I immediately thought of Leviticus, and the sharp warning about consulting with mediums. Have you run into any of that in your internet hate that you've been dealing with, or is the medium thing something that you're pursuing or have talked about?
So I personally don't have like the distinct gift of, well, actually, I don't really know. I have run into it. And at first it really freaks me out because of the warnings, the Leviticus and the pre-conditioning. Yeah. And then recently I've come to accept that I have a lot of the clairs, like clairvoyance, I don't even know what they are. Just means that you're sensing things that aren't in the visible sphere. So I haven't consulted a medium regarding my family or anything yet. I would love to. I feel really picky about that type of stuff, of who I choose. But I have a really strong connection with my mother. She's like my main spirit guide. And I have picked up things myself about what's going on with her. And so my mom is not going to reincarnate for a long time, probably until I die, because she acts as a guide for people who have died to usher them into sort of eternity, or like the whatever you think. I don't have a full idea of what the afterlife is, but she's like a host in that way. And if you knew my mom, she's like the best suited for that job. And I can see her just really loving that. One thing, I had already had an idea that this is what she was doing just from my own prayers and talking with her and meditations. But then my dad's friend, one of his best friends, really sadly died very quickly from stage 4 cancer, melanoma, last year. And his name was Derek. And Derek was not super close with my mom at all. Like, he's a really quiet guy. Of course, they knew each other, type of thing. But apparently when so my dad was sitting with Derek when he took his last breaths. And at the end, he started saying my mom's name over and over. Like, oh, Michelle, like as if he was talking with her. Wow. And my dad told me that. And I have a lot of these moments where I'm like, I knew it. Because I'd already had that sense that that's what she was doing. And so she's just very close by. And it took me a while to understand. And I think it took her a while, actually, that she isn't the her that I knew, but the most vibrant, the real her that was underneath the trauma, really. And so the other day I had this, because I get pretty scared of growing old and death. And I had this thought where I was like, oh yeah, when I die, I'll be going to her. Like, she'll be, not only because of this idea of we rejoin our friends and family, which I think is beautiful and you can see in many faith backgrounds, but because I've received this information or knowledge that she is literally a guide for those that she loves. And so that was such a weird realization for me, to think about being passed from people to people, like to being passed from the people that I love in this life. And who knows who will be dead by the time I'm dead, type of thing. And but that right when I die, there's her. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So it does lead us to also, and I know we need to hop off here in just a minute, but it does lead us to, I think, a good landing strip here of land the plane, William. Yeah, heaven and hell. Just the idea of heaven
I'm really taken with C.S. Lewis. Speaking of tattoos from earlier, I'm devoting an arm to him. I've got here. I'll show you. I've got Aslan.
Not safe, but
right,
good.
Not safe, but good. And there's Clive Staples himself.
Yep.
And then you've got the Dawn Treader and the children walking into the portal in the wave wall. Anyway,
I've been to that closet.
Really?
In the Midwest, yeah.
Oh my gosh!
It's at Wheaton.
Yeah, that's
Wheaton
incredible.
College in Illinois.
I'm going to also be getting the bus from The Great Divorce.
Cool.
Did you ever read that one?
I did, and I remember, again, goldfish memory trickles of it. But The Great Divorce is what led me to. It was the first thing that led me to not believing in hell. I'm sure that was not his intention, but yeah, I was reading that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they get off the bus and then the grass hurts their feet, right?
That's right, yeah.
Because it's real, it's pure realness, and that they had experienced hell, which is just non-reality, and so it hurt to literally feel something real.
Right.
Am I jumping too far in? Because I have.
You are not. This is why I took us here, because yes, C.S. Lewis was actually a universal Christian, so he was trying to influence belief away from hell. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Rock on. Yeah, I was reading that at the same time that two things were happening in one of my classes. I think this is so funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. One of my classes, we had to split into groups to debate universalism versus determinism versus, I don't know. It was just all the different ideas of how people get into heaven. And we had three groups. One of them was, it is distinctly Jesus is the way, truth, and the life. And you have to have explicit confession and knowledge of him. And the second group was, Jesus is the only way and the truth and the life. However, you don't have to have explicit knowledge of that. Like, you may get on that path through other paths. And then there was the third group, which was universalism, which was it's all leading to a happy ending. I don't know why I did that with like an Italian mob voice.
Hey, paisan.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that I get to wherever it is and there's just like Greek and Italians just kind of like hanging out and welcoming me with wine. Anyway, so I joined. No one wanted to join the Universalist group because obviously that's going to be the hardest one to defend. I destroyed, and I didn't mean to, because I didn't believe in that. But I was just like, yeah, I'll join that debate team, 7 Wing 8. I was like, yeah, fucking let's destroy these people. And then I did. And my teacher was like grinning at me because I think she had that, we both were having a moment because I was going off and then I like locked eyes with her almost as if like, oh no, like what did I just do? Like I just convinced myself of universalism. Yeah. She was cracking up. She ended up getting fired because that college sucks. And they replaced her with this like super conservative dude that didn't teach world religions at all. But so that was happening. And then I was doing a Hebrew study on the word Belial or Belial and it means of nothing, but it's used as a word to embody Satan. Like the Satan is not even a real.
Oh, here we go.
I know. So the word, and then so I was doing that class, and my conclusion was like, this is such good news because the embodiment of evil in the Old Testament, and then there's a couple scattered. I think there's 1 or 2 verses where Paul uses it, is literally saying that it's of nothing. It is of empty air. So we don't have anything to be afraid of because it's just the lack of something. My teacher gave me a B because she's like, I don't think you got it. I don't think you understood it. And this was a 10-page assignment that took me 3 months, it was front and back to look into. So I looked into the front and backs of this Hebrew word. And at the end, my last little paragraph was just like, I have come to the conclusion that at least textually, this is telling us that there's, at the very least, that it means that evil is just nothingness. And then my interpretation, my take on that is, why would I be afraid of nothing? If it's just emptiness, I know that I'm not empty. And so So hell's not
Preach.
real. There's nothing to be afraid of. At the very least, hell is something that we experience from each other. And what else do I have to say about that? And C.S. Lewis led me to believe that hell's not real.
Well, I think that for me, what's changed is the reality. It's not to say that it doesn't manifest in reality. It's instead to say that it does in a much more present way than I think even like a fierce fundamental Christian would say. Like they're thinking about warning you about some eternal destination, where Christ is telling you like, no, you're really getting burned now. You're getting burned right now.
I was just talking about this to my partner where I was like, holy crap. Every example that Jesus gave was like, no, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Like a mustard seed. You can hold it. It's right here. And they're like, oh, it's in the clouds. We're going to, and he's like, stop. Oh my God. Like I can just imagine him getting like, how many more analogies can I use to tell you that it's right here and right now?
Yeah. Yeah. The dirt under the fingernails. I like that you said that. I'm going to bring that back to this, because the way that I'm thinking of Christ these days is this very, very clear-eyed human who
Pisces,
who had his hands on the like core of being and reality. And when you talked about sin having an essential non-essence, which is just like a oxymoron, it's true that Julian of Norwich, mystic, said, that she saw sin as having no substance.
I love her.
Oh, she's a rock star. But yeah, the idea of Satan and it's so the I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but the personification or the way that Satan appears in the stories is always so like shifty and shadowy, and it just doesn't really have form,
I think part of that is because we are so afraid of change. And so how can we shove all of our fear of change into one being? Let's make it this shapeshifter. And that's like feminine too. And there's the connection of the demonization of the feminine. Even the bright morning star, which is described as Satan, that was originally used to describe the planet Venus in the sky. Also, devil spelled backwards is lived.
Hey, okay.
So anyway, that's in a new song that I just started listening to, and good for that.
That's good. Jena, we need to do a part 2 because I know you need to go here. So here's what I want to say. And then I want you to tell us where we can find you on the webs. So
I'm on 3%, which I'm stressed about because I lost my charger, but let's do this.
God, this will be fast, I promise. So what I love about watching you and listening to you is that I see this look in your eye like I imagine John the Baptizer had in his eye, and we see it in the people who are on fire for whatever their cause is, and I see that in your eyes. So I just want to let you know. I just want to leave you with that. Like I'm very happy for how embodied your belief is in you, and I want to bless you, and I hope we get to do this again sometime soon. So tell us where we can find you. Where are you on the webs?
Yeah, this is really fun for me too. This is really fun. I try not to, my brain always wants to hierarchy stuff. I don't think it's a 7 thing. Like if I eat something like, this is the best sandwich I've ever had. And I mean it. And right now I'm like, this is the best podcast conversation I've ever had, which is me saying that I really appreciate it. And it's really good. Please find me right now it's Joy Play. I'll just tell you guys here, I'm changing my name of my business soon. This is the first time I've announced that. I'm really excited. But right now you can find me at JoyPlay 2_ or at joyplay.org. And I do a podcast called Little Ritual. And I'm going to try and make it as good as your podcast one day. One day when I grow up.
That is so kind. It's so kind. Okay. Well, Jena, thank you for joining me today. And let's do this again. It'd be great.
Would love to.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, Jenna. Examining our own belief and our own knee-jerk reactions to the beliefs of others is a very worthwhile thing for us to do. In an age where religion is changing drastically and the amount of people who are holding fast to older beliefs is diminishing, with a landscape just shifting like crazy right now, our own beliefs and our own judgments are something that we're going to have to evaluate in a brand new way. And there's nothing wrong with holding on to your beliefs. Where the problem comes in is when we start to make those beliefs exclusionary and start to use those beliefs as a way to push our own agenda and to come out on top as some ideologically superior person with our tribe of people who believe just like we do. So this is the challenge of this new phase of spirituality in the world, and it is rising up fast. It is a brand new landscape to navigate, and we're going to have to get better at doing that. So your judgments that may come up in you related to those beliefs are something that we're going to be challenging here at the Cathedral Project and through this Ground podcast. So let's not hold up these artifices of belief that alienate us from one another and that make immediate judgments so readily available, that make our discrimination and the pox on our history, the pitfalls and the nastiness that human beings are capable of, we can avoid those. We can see the way that our belief and our ensuing judgments and then the actions that we're willing to take based on those beliefs have marked us over history. It's something that we need to learn from together. I heard the philosopher Peter Rollins say that the toxicity we see in the world is actually the toxicity that we're afraid of inside ourselves. And he was using that to reference like outrage culture and cancel culture to talk about the mental and psychological forces at work that create that sort of collective tribal movement. And it actually is worth reflecting on to think that those things inside ourselves that we have not yet dealt with fully or not yet come to peace with fully are the things we're trying to stamp out of the world around us. So as we enter into a moment of reflection together, let's keep that in our minds. All we're going to do right now is we're going to step back as we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. You don't have to shut your eyes. This is just a moment of reflection. All we're going to do is think about the areas where we get the most triggered when we're talking with friends and family, or when we're scrolling through Instagram, or when the news comes on and some new issues come up. Let's think about the things that are triggering us the hardest. And we're not going to try to come to some conclusion universally that all of those beliefs are bad and need to go away. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're going to try to do is examine why the belief holds so strongly to us, and what it is about that belief inside ourselves that causes us to react so strongly. If we can start to evaluate belief that way, and if we can start to look around at the other people of the world and see the beliefs that they hold and see the practices that they exhibit in their lives and cultures, and to see what's working and what actually we hold in common with those cultures and with those beliefs, religions, traditions, whatever it is, we can begin to see resonance between ourselves and the rest of humanity. So at the very least, it's a positive exercise for us to examine our beliefs in that light. And hopefully, as we continue this practice of self-reflection and mindfulness, of self-awareness of our own mental loops that we might get into with belief, we can actually begin to soften toward the rest of humanity. I've also heard it said that, you cannot break something that doesn't resist. If there's an egg in front of you and you push on the shell of that egg, it's going to break because it's resisting the outer world, right? To protect the egg inside it. But something that is infinitely pliable, something that is humble and does not resist any force coming at it, can actually not be broken at all. So this is not to say that you don't need to resist at all in your life, and it's not to say that, to be a valuable and successful human being that you have to offer no resistance ever, because there are definitely times when resistance is necessary. However, our inner core, our soul, the higher self inside us that we carry, that's just inextricably connected to God and invincible, doesn't need to resist a thing. It just needs to be the witness to the lessons of life that we're going through and guide us into some more enlightened and some more powerful future if we'll allow it to do so. So let's look at those resistances that are the shell of the egg that will break. Let's try to see where our own toxicity that we're afraid of inside ourselves is something we're actually projecting out onto the world around us. And let's try to see where we have potential for growth in belief, to embrace beliefs that are more universal, that really do lead us into a more positive future, that are less exclusionary, that include one another in greater and more powerful ways. And I think this is the way that we imagine a better world together through this kind of practice. So take this moment of reflection and silence, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. I think it can't be overstated how important it is for us to do this kind of work together. You just sitting there listening to this and being open to these new thoughts is a real work happening in your life, and is a real force happening in the world. And as these thoughts and as these types of movements begin to gather and build more momentum, we may actually be able to behold real, meaningful change in the world around us. And it will be through your openness, through your willingness to challenge long-held belief, through your willingness to be humble in that way, to be the kind of change that we want to see in the world together. So, thank you for being a listener. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Ground Podcast from the Cathedral Project. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet. Tell your friends about it. Check us out on the internet at cathedralproject.com. And you can follow us on Instagram now at Ground Podcast. Go in peace.